Welcome. All right, so I think we're ready to get started, guys. Ready? Okay. Okay. So we're going to begin. So my name is Josh Brunotte. I'm from Aichi Prefectural University.
Hello, and I'm Chris Hastings from Nanzan University.
Yeah, and today we are going to be presenting to you about our experience using VR, virtual reality, in the language classroom, and some advice and tips we have if you want to try to use this technology in your class as well.
Oh, don't need to do that yet. Sorry, let me talk a little bit more about who we are and what we've been doing. We've been experimenting and doing research with specifically smartphone-based virtual reality, mostly the Google Cardboard platform. Our biggest research project to date has been looking into how using Google Cardboard to help prepare students going to study abroad before pre-departure, how it might reduce their anxiety and how that might improve study abroad outcomes. But yeah, we've also been doing stuff like using Google Expeditions in our classes and seeing how we might use these cardboard headsets and what's the best way to do English instruction using cardboard headsets. So yeah, those are our two main things.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking in pretty general terms today, but if you want to hear more specifics about our studies, or if you want hands-on time with gear, which I'm sure you might be interested in, please come up to the Maver table up on the 6th floor, Maver SIG. You can use some of the equipment today. Okay. All right. All right, here's a rundown of some of the things we're going to be talking about. We have 10 tips to give you. Let's get started. Okay. So one of our first pieces of advice is to start simple, okay? This can be very complex. I think we would argue that it's probably easier than you would imagine to use VR in your classrooms if you've never done it before. But there are a lot of technical considerations, especially because you're asking students, in our case, to use smartphone virtual reality. So you're asking students to provide their technology to help implement the activities. So we really recommend starting small, especially if you've never done this before. So if you have the opportunity to just work with students one-on-one, this is the best way to start. Okay. So it's only been, we've been doing this for about 3 years now, and it's only this year that I've actually tried to implement these activities with full-size classes of 30 people. So really, our first piece of advice is start small, individual students, small groups of students, and then test your gear. There's always going to be some kind of technological hiccup. So if you can go to the space before class starts, set up all your gear, do a dry run, you're really going to have more successful outcomes. So yeah, start small, test your gear. Something is always probably going to go wrong technologically.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Maybe if you do like a lunchtime English circle where you have a few students coming to that might be a good place to try and test it out. And then if it's successful, then you can scale up. Yeah, awesome. The next one is 360 photos and videos, Photospheres, true VR. Some of you may or may not be thinking that unless you have like the latest and best headsets like Oculus Rifts with the highest fidelity of images or the best latency, then it's not really worth doing things in the classroom unless you have that amazing technology. But our experience so far has been things like Photospheres, 360 videos, freely available apps like Google Expeditions available on the Google platform. They've been the easiest to implement and actually do English language teaching with. So that's my advice. If you think you need an Oculus Rift or quite specialized, expensive equipment, you don't. You can do a lot with these much cheaper, simpler headsets.
That's right. Yeah, we use low-cost virtual reality. So students use their own devices, and then we use these very cheap, affordable headsets made out of cardboard. They're called Google Cardboard, and they cost less than 1,000 yen. So yeah, try to really keep the costs low. Yeah. Okay. All right. Another piece of maybe advice or another thing we like to talk about is one of the criticisms of this new technology is that people might assume that you're trying to replace traditional teaching methods with virtual reality. And for us, at least, this is not the case. We really consider this a supplementary activity. Yeah, it's something that's really great for getting students excited about a topic, introducing the topic. I often use virtual reality for skills classes. So for maybe a reading class, this will be an initial activity to introduce a topic to them, right? So this year we were talking about ocean health, environmental issues of the ocean. So we did a Google Expeditions tour of the Great Barrier Reef to start. It's great as a supplementary, maybe initial activity, and then lead it on to more traditional teaching methods. So we're definitely not trying to say that virtual reality is going to replace textbooks or other traditional methods. And especially because some students do have physical aversions to virtual reality. So some people consider like, okay, this year instead of a textbook, I'm just gonna have Google Cardboard. This will be my textbook. That's all I'll use. Every class, I'm gonna use virtual reality. But some students have a very adverse physical reactions. They get nauseated or they get eye strain. So even as a supplementary activity, some students have to put down the headset after just a couple of minutes. So yeah, really, it's best in small doses. I think it's their next piece of advice.
Yeah, definitely. Good point. Yeah, the next one is goals. Again, this may seem kind of obvious, but when you're planning to apply this technology to the language classroom, you really don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. You still, of course, need to think in English language terms. So, is it your goal to use it in an input-focused task, or is it even going to be an activity or a task, or is it going to be output-focused? Do you want to use things, maybe use it as a part of story listening or storytelling to make input more comprehensible? So yeah, try to have very specific language teaching oriented goals when you want to try and use this technology in the classroom. And also like goals for your learners, because it's so, you need to give them very clear goals, what you expect them to do when they're using the headsets, because it's so exciting and so immersive. Many times when learners put on the headsets, you kind of need to give them like a few minutes to acclimatize, because they often like forget instructions or run off in the virtual world, do something completely different, because yeah, it's a very affecting medium. They get very excited.
Yeah, we've seen this when we've done hands-on workshops with teachers as well. They're just as excited as the students. So as soon as they put on the headset, you've lost them. So yeah, they've explained before. Give them the headsets. Yeah. Okay. Our next piece of advice is maybe a little hard to hear, especially as instructors, right? We want activities to be 100% successful every time, right? We want every student to be able to participate fully, get the best outcomes, but as kind of a result of this medium, how complicated it is, how technological it is, probably every time you implement this with a big class, there's going to be a few students who can't participate fully. Right? You've seen Japanese students' cell phones, right? They drop them, screens are cracked so often. I don't know what they're doing. How often they're just tossing them down? I don't know. But other times too, like you ask students to download an app they need for the activity, maybe they haven't downloaded it. So almost every time there's going to be one or two students that can't completely participate in the VR activity. So we recommend plan around this, right? So do like what we do. If there is a virtual reality activity, they're looking in their smartphones, but you should also be kind of casting something, sending something to the projector that they can all be looking at. So like I said, some students need to take a break, their eyes get tired, so they put it down. If you have something going to the projector, they can still be looking, participating, while the other students are using the headsets. And then also, if you design pair activities, this can be a lot better too. If you have one device for every two students or a group of students, there's a lot less chance you're going to have this kind of technological malfunctions. So even if you have some problems, please consider this a success. 80%, 90% of students are participating fully. This is still a successful VR activity in our minds. Yeah.
Who here kind of considers themselves like an ed tech teacher or a techie teacher, kind of? Yeah. You're probably kind of aware of this mantra: check, and check again, and then just check one more time for good measure. Like with devices always being online, the software and apps you all have always being online, and like we live in the era of like auto updates. Make sure you don't get stuck in the situation where an auto update changes some kind of functionality that you were relying on to do your activity. This has happened to us a couple of times before. One example was when Google Street View has VR cardboard mode where you can sort of walk around in Street View and you can actually move around in the app. And they did an update where it took the functionality out, I think for like the old magnet style clicker, I think it was, to allow you to do input. So yeah, we tried then, we wanted to do the activity in class, and then which relied on students being able to move, and then they couldn't move. So yeah, check again. Also, kind of minor things like if the graphical user interface of an app, if things are moved around, you'd be surprised by how much of a spanner that can throw in the works. So yeah, I'm sure if you're an EdTech teacher, you're familiar with this, but yeah, check again just before maybe the night before, or close day of when you're planning to implement these activities in class or tasks in class.
Yeah, maybe don't assume that updates are always progressing in the app. Sometimes you lose functionality with an update for some reason. It comes back again later. Yeah, so check. Yeah, don't get burned. Okay. We'd like to talk a little bit too about the power, kind of our consideration of how powerful this technology can be as a learning tool as well. So not just the pragmatics of implementing it. Virtual reality can be a very powerful input tool, both in the SLA terms of input as far as linguistic input, but also stimulative input as well, right? So yeah, it's very powerful. So for example, in Google Expeditions, they're receiving very immersive, very interesting visual input from the panoramic photos, right? So I took the students to the Great Barrier Reef. They're looking around, but they're also learning. They're getting informational input as well, right? So for Google Expeditions, they're looking at pictures, but the teacher also has a script. So they're giving the students information about what they're seeing. So they're learning about a content topic. They're learning about something that they're looking at. And you can also show points of interest within the picture as well. So they're actually getting knowledge about a topic before they go on to some kind of skills-based activity. So it's very powerful in that. So they're all receiving linguistic input from the teacher and also knowledge input as well, right, from the content as well. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, not only input. So yeah, like one of the ways we suggest to use this new kind of smartphone-based immersive virtual reality is by using it as a way to kind of make maybe teacher input more compelling or memorable or comprehensible as a way to do that. But yeah, not only input, output as well for students, so you can use it for output-based tasks and activities. So there's quite a few tools available now where learners can, like the Google VR camera or 360 camera. I've seen teachers training their students in how to take the photos and then do a narration of the photosphere that they took, maybe their room or somewhere in their town. Students lead, being the leader or the tour guide on a Google expedition. Using it as a prompt for maybe writing activities. So yeah, not only input but also output as well. This is some heavy doors.
Okay. So I think the larger point we're trying to get at is the power of virtual reality as a tool, as a teaching tool, right? It's not just a novelty. I want people to kind of consider it as a serious learning device as well, and a method for instruction. Yeah. All right, we have a couple more points left. Thank you guys for listening. Just a couple more minutes here. All right, so down to our last two tips. Last one from me. When you guys consider using virtual reality in your classroom, when you're designing tasks, when you're thinking about how to implement this, I think one of our biggest pieces of advice is to design tasks that involve pairs of students, right? And as far as communicative language teaching goes, we understand the power of this. But also for lots of reasons, virtual reality is a lot better oftentimes in groups of students and pairs of students, right? Just as far as task design goes, it's perfect for gap activities, right? An information gap. So one student is looking at the headset, they're receiving input, right? Maybe they're walking down a street in Google Street View, right? So with our study abroad students, we have them go to the campus they're about to study abroad at, walk around the neighborhoods around the campus. So they're receiving, one student's getting that input in the headset. The other student can't see the input they're getting, So it's perfect for an information gap activity. So we've designed tasks where one student is walking virtually around the city, the other student has a map, a two-dimensional map, and they're guiding that student through the city. So as far as task design goes, it's perfect for these kind of tasks. But other considerations too, right? The technological considerations we already talked about. When you have one device for every few students, it's a lot better chance that things are going to go well, right? You have at least one working device between every two students. But there's other concerns as well. When you have a BYOD, bring your own device policy, you're also asking students to kind of reveal their socioeconomic status as well. So some students can't afford smartphones, or for whatever reason their family hasn't provided them with a smartphone, right? So if your activity design means every student needs a smartphone, needs to be using virtual reality, there might be some awkward conversations like that as well. So for lots of reasons, pair group activity design is probably optimal for VR. It's one of our biggest pieces of advice. Okay.
Yeah, the last one, visual context. So I don't know, I don't think there's the data yet to back up the theory or hypotheses, but I guess the idea is that VR is a possible way of making input in the sense of SLA input more comprehensible and maybe more compelling and more memorable because of presence, essentially, the ideas of immersion and presence. But yeah, this last point is more related to how we learn languages, by mostly learning languages. Yeah, mostly learning vocabulary, words. Like that's a huge part of it. And I guess if you're a second language learner, you're going to be, sometimes when you're learning a new word, you're going to be using a dictionary. That's one way of making that form meaning connection. But a lot of the time, you're just looking at pictures. Yeah, you're using like visual data to make input comprehensible, or to like make that form meaning connection. And yeah, VR might be a way to give learners a lot more visual context. Like if you imagine a teacher taking a group of learners to the rainforest and talking about maybe the rainforest canopy, for example. What's a canopy? Look up, yeah, and then using circling techniques from maybe methodologies like story listening or storytelling. So yeah, start off with like a simple yes or no question. Can you see the canopy? Yeah, what color is the canopy? Yeah, so like you're working that input using the visual context that the VR virtual environment is giving you. And I think that could be really powerful.
Thank you, guys. So before we get to questions, I have about 5 minutes for questions. We'd like to do a little plug. We are involved in the Maver 6. Some of you are as well, right? If you're interested in this topic, we would really like you to consider joining Maver. We talk about mixed, augmented, and virtual reality. We have a table upstairs, so come play with our toys. We have such good stuff. Yeah, come upstairs. 6th floor in the lobby. We have Google Daydreams, Cardboard, lots of Oculus Rifts. Yeah, lots of good stuff. So please. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes for comments or questions. Yeah, please.
I'm someone who gets quite motion sick in VR. Mm-hmm. How do you introduce that idea to students? If someone doesn't like English already, and now you're making me physically sick.
Coming at us with the hard questions right off the bat. It's okay. Yeah. Well, a lot of the apps we use don't have like moving pictures. We don't use videos so much. So a lot of times the panoramic photos, you're controlling where you're looking. There's no motion on the screen, so usually it's not so bad. But yeah, in small doses.
Yeah, it's more like it depends on the type of like transition, the kind of transition which they use in the app, the software as well. Like the ones where you're just kind of walking from spot to spot, those aren't too bad for motion sickness. It's the ones that actually like simulate real movement, that those the transitions that make people queasy.
Do you explain it to the students beforehand? Like how do you introduce it?
Oh yeah, the fact that they might have an adverse physical reaction. Yeah, you should definitely mention that. That wouldn't be a nice surprise for them. Yeah, if they already don't like English and now you're making them sick.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, that's also why you have images going to the projector as well. So like anytime you need to take a break, put it down. And then I just build into the task too, every couple minutes, putting it down and having some kind of interaction with the student next to them. It's like a discussion question about what they've just seen. So yeah, built-in breaks. It's really cool. Okay, other questions?
So, when you're talking about projecting to the screen, is that the same that the student has within the headset? Is that live?
That can be a problem. Okay, so for expeditions, you can just use an iPad and then stream the teacher view of the expedition photo to the screen. A lot of times, if you plug in an iPhone and it's in the headset, it'll show like the split view, the 2-eye view, and it often will be up to like sideways as well. So yeah, usually the iPad is probably better, and not exactly what they're seeing, but some kind of single image is usually best. Does that answer your question? All right, more. Come on, guys, bring it on, please.
Can the teacher control what the students are looking at? For example, is it like a Google Street View? How do you stop the student from just like walking off into the abyss? You know, can you control that?
No, with that particular app, it's completely solo. So you just have to give the student some kind of an activity or a task that you wanted them to do, instructions, and then let them get on with it. Expeditions is where everyone's in the same virtual space together. And also Expeditions is really cool. It allows you to track student gaze. So there's like little smiley faces where you can see where the students are looking. So that's a good one. You could use that to like check are they actually comprehending what I'm saying. If I use a particular word, are they looking at the physical object? Yeah, things like that. But no, it's Street View, they're on their own.
All right. And does that work with Google, like Android and?
Yeah,
it's cross-platform.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, Expeditions is great too because it's a 360-degree photo, but there's points of interest within the photo. So as the teacher, you click a point of interest, and then they see an arrow to like, oh, look this way. So they all turn their heads, and they're all looking that way. And like Chris said, you can see once they've all kind of turned their gaze to that spot. So yeah, you get feedback as the teacher as well. Who is there between you guys?
Have you found ways to tie in assessment with using the Google Cardboard?
No, not necessarily, not yet. It's still kind of early days for that. It's great as a prompt for a discussive activity or even like a writing prompt. And I guess you could lead that into some sort of assessment down the line. Yeah. Have you tried that?
No, I'm just thinking, like if you did a content-based class and you took them on a trip I'll use the example of the rainforest again, and then maybe you could do something like simple can-do statements, like can you say 3 things you've learned about the rainforest? You get 2 points if you can do it, 1 point if you nearly did it, and 0 if you couldn't do it. So yeah, but no, I've never used it in an assessment scheme.
Yeah, but if you have those kind of activities immediately following a VR activity, you can kind of see how much they've comprehended of the tour or whatever activity you're doing. So that definitely gauges the teacher immediately after the activity how much they've absorbed from the information from the activity. So that's a good question. Yeah, please.
Just because I take this thing from the expeditions, I'm saying annotate the world as well.
Yeah, that's right.
You suggest that making your own environments to your environments for Google expeditions.
That's sorry.
It seems like a pretty good idea. Let's keep them in the same place.
Yeah, Google has just in the last week or so,
Yeah,
last
like
couple
few
weeks,
days.
they've opened it up where you can create your own tour now for Google Expeditions. We're starting now. So it's called Tour Creator. If you Google that, Tour Creator, so you can use your own photos, right?
Yeah, you can either upload your own 360 photos, or you can use existing photos that are part of Google Street View. I've had experimented with it by myself, but I haven't used what I've made in my classes.
There's other websites that will host your photos for you, but this looks like the best choice for a tour. So yeah, Tour Creator. You can check that out. Sure. Yeah, about 30 seconds.
If we're looking for funding to buy equipment, did you guys use some sort of precision matrix to feed your case for implementing some new technology?
Oh, to our universities?
Yeah.
My university's been pretty good about, if I just explain to them it's for a class activity, they're pretty good about providing it. Yeah.
Scale up and I know cardboard is cheap.
Yeah.
But no, just try to think like many people try to introduce new technologies.
Yeah.
And so we just say, oh, I've decided, I'm doing it.
Yeah, I guess it depends on your institution, right? How skeptical they are.
So this year I published a decision matrix to
Yeah,
try
yeah.
some people who feel decide whether they should go ahead with the technology or not. So you can use that decision matrix to then say, well, we've gone through the process of deciding pros and cons and strengths and pros and cons for each. So you can use that to then.
Yeah, please share it. Please share it. All right, sorry guys, we got to clear out. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much.
Can you turn that
Oh, Chisholm. Yeah. I'll be there in about 30 minutes after this next one. Eric, do you mind turning this off? Oh, Chris, it doesn't turn off. Oh, you got it.